Hello, readers and listeners alike. I am Wandering Taff, and this is the Chronicle of Progress. Entry 5. Algernon, Beerchasp, and the Belching Bear. As mentioned in my last entry, Algernon Beerchasp has been around since Progress was just an unnamed farming township centered around a hill. But Algernon's story starts much further back than that. Algernon Beerchasp was a woodsman and nature speaker long before he ever met the Duke. He's a large and grizzled man with graying hair now, but when he was younger, he was a warden of a particular patch of forest, many miles southwest of Rabbius's boyhood home. He guarded this particular forest as a point of duty, protecting it from outside influences, the uninhibited axes of professional loggers, and the fire-loving goblin tribe just on the outskirts of the forest. Algernon was a loner, choosing to live a quiet life in the woods with his companion, Diana, an oversized grizzly bear. Algernon spent his time keeping this forest safe because it was a natural home for several dryads. As dryads are bound to their own individual tree, they can't move more than 300 yards from it. The destruction of the forest would be dangerous to the indigenous Fey inhabitants. He had many skirmishes with the fire-loving goblins. At first, for many years, he remained on the defensive, only extinguishing the fires they started with magically summoned water and weather control. Eventually, he moved his home to the edge of the forest, directly between the goblins and the dryads, to deal more directly with the threat that they posed. Algernon, ever more irritated by the goblins' love of wanton destruction and desire to burn down his home and forest, began setting up traps and wards to detect and help him kill the pests as they entered the woods. The fight soon escalated to a full-scale war. The entire goblin tribe became obsessed with burning the forest to ash and killing Algernon and Diana in the process. He managed to stave them off for a time, but was quickly becoming overwhelmed. Goblins may not be the most intelligent of creatures, but they have a tendency to breed at a prodigious rate. It was about this time that Algernon met the Duke. By this point in the Duke's career, he was a holy knight and was traveling from one end of the country to another on a mission from his diocese to root out and eliminate a necromantic cult which had sprung up in the northern region. While this task was unrelated to Algernon's plight, Rabbius did pass through the Dryad's forest. The two men met, and after a night of the woodsman replenishing the paladin's provisions and drinking Algernon's now famous brew, Rabbius decided to help the one-man army stop the goblin threat once and for all. Over several days, the two planned a methodical raid, utilizing fire and well-laid traps to funnel the goblins out of their camp and into a killing lane. By day, they planned, and by night, they entertained themselves with drinking songs, music performed by Rabbius, and laughing at Diana drinking so much that she could barely walk. Once the setup was done, they enacted the traps. The plan went off without a hitch. Goblins were dying in droves. Diana, however, took a poisoned arrow during the fight and succumbed to it. Neither the woodsman's nature magic nor the paladin's holy magic could not stop the death of Diana. The poison had gotten too deep before they could get to her and cure her affliction. Algernon went wild, abandoning the methodical and safe killing lane that the two had created, and charged into the goblin encampment. Rabbius followed. When it was over 100 goblins were dead, and the forest was safe. But both were shook by the loss of Diana, Algernon's faithful companion. After a pyre was built for the goblins to stave off disease, and a funeral held for Diana, Rabbius left Algernon's home and continued to his original task of rooting out evil in the north. Algernon fell into a depression. Not even the playful fae of the woods could comfort him. It wasn't long that, after that, Algernon left the forest and ventured out into the world again. For several years, he traveled from town to town, providing his service and expertise in a variety of roles, but he never stayed in one place for too long, at least until he was reunited with Rabbius. Freshly distancing himself from his holy order, he enticed Algernon to stay in the town and open up a tavern. Algernon had never settled in a town before, but decided that he would give it a try. Much to his surprise, he felt quite at home here, as he did in the Dryad Forest. The city quickly expanded, and he moved to keep his bar and brew available to a larger group of people. Soon after, he was contacted by the newly developing guilds in the town. They were working together to put a service into place so that those looking for work could be easily contacted and contracted as well. Algernon accepted, and since then, he and several other establishments have begun keeping tabs on available and ongoing jobs that the guilds may need adventurers for. The guilds pay the inn and barkeeps a finder's fee for every adventurer they contact for them, which becomes a lucrative side business for all involved. Algernon's bar moved a third time after some trouble erupted with the Brewers Guild. Since Algernon won't pay them dues to get their purity seal on his now infamous beverage, he claims that they made his life difficult, but didn't go into details. A source who wished to remain anonymous within the Brewers Guild has told me that the guild threatened to burn his bar to the ground, which resulted in him moving to a less prominent area of the city. This move must have been a fair compromise for the guild, as the Belching Bear has been in operation in the city standards for some years now with no incident. Outside the building itself contains a large painting of a bear, the likeness of Diana, so I'm told, with an overly large mouth expanded over the entranceway, so that all who enter get a whiff of Diana's breath when they enter the establishment. This concludes my entry on Algernon and the Belching Bear. Full disclosure, I know Algernon Beerchasp and his establishment personally, having gone there for on several occasions for drinks. Algernon, when this missive is finally published, and if you ever read your own particular entry, I hope that I have not betrayed your confidence with anything I've written, as my goal is to create a true and unbiased history of progress and its inhabitants for posterity. And for those of you who believe my journalistic integrity may be compromised by my aforementioned relationship with Algernon, well, I'll be writing about you soon. As usual, at the bottom is an index linking you to my other entries that are mentioned in this particular topic. If a topic piqued your interest, feel free to cross-reference the information for yourself. I don't monetize these entries, but if I did, I would tell you, before you cut a copper for me, send a silver to your favorite charity. If you're active in your church, tithe a bit more. Or if you're active in your community, spend a little more time volunteering. And lastly, I challenge us all to look the homeless in the eye when we pass and not just walk by with our eyes straight ahead. We all have hearts and souls and minds and should be loved. If you enjoy what you hear, feel free to drop me a like. If you want to know more about Progress and its inhabitants, subscribe and you'll get weekly updates. Or if you have a question, drop a line in the comments below. Lastly, and most importantly, if you don't like what you hear, give me a dislike and tell me why. I'm always looking to hone my craft. And how else will I know what works and what doesn't? Be waiting, for my next entry will come soon. But until then, good evening.